guys, for today's video I wanted to talk to you about how to stay positive when everything is going wrong around you. And I'm sure that there are a couple people in your life or a couple situations in your life in which whenever you're around that person, you always seem to absorb their negativity, or they always seem to bring you down. Or whenever there's a certain situation or a certain place even, you always just feel dragged down. And especially if that's a person, you almost blame them and you're like, oh my God, they are such a negative person. Whenever I'm around them, I feel like I'm in a terrible mood. And that could be as simple as forgetting an assignment for work or for school, or it could be serious, like losing a loved one. But I wanted to talk to you about how you can remain positive in some of those situations that we deem as negative. And I put negative in quotes because of one of the reasons that we'll be talking about. But when it comes to staying positive in situations, one thing that we have to realize is that when we communicate with other humans, our sociology and the psychology of the way we react and respond to each other is kind of like a mirror. If someone comes in and is very negative, it's very easy to feel like they're bringing you down. But in reality, you could be just kind of matching the attitudes that they are giving off, the energy that they're giving off, or the negativity that they are giving off. Now, what's interesting about this sociological phenomenon as well is that when somebody comes in and they have positivity, or they are spontaneous or optimistic, the other people around them start to mirror that activity as well. So this interesting phenomenon could happen in both ways. You could be hanging around someone negative and mirroring their actions, or you could be hanging around someone outgoing and mirroring their actions. But regardless of which it is, you also have to realize that in that situation, you are being the effect. Something else is causing something, and your response and your feelings on the inside are an effect of that situation. Now, what if you turned the tables in that situation, and instead of being the person who reacts, what if you were the person who was the cause? For instance, let's say that you go into a work meeting, or you go to see a friend and you meet some of their new friends at lunch for the first time. Instead of letting whatever they're feeling kind of rub off on you and kind of bounce off of you like a mirror, why not actually go into that situation and say, I'm going to be positive, or I'm going to be funny, or I am going to be optimistic, or I am going to be spontaneous. And so then when you start acting out those actions, at first some people might be a little bit resilient to it. But after a while, they're going to start mirroring your actions, which collectively brings up the positivity or the energy or the spontaneity of the entire group. Now, this is extremely interesting because it is human psychology. But when you realize that you don't have to be the person affected by the situation, and you can actually cause the situation to go in the way you want, it really helps you to remain positive in that situation. One thing that I always bring up is something that I learned from Oprah when watching one of her interviews. And it's that you cannot control anything that is going on around you. The only thing you can control is yourself. And that is very true. When you think about it, life is literally just happening around us. Everything is just happening. And we're sitting here and we're observing it. But it's when we start reacting to it that we start attaching emotional significance to whatever is going on, to a person, to a place, to a relationship, to an item. And when we start attaching those emotions, that's when we start labeling things as positive or as negative. But in actuality, no situation at all is positive or negative. It just is. What determines whether it's positive or negative is really just the opinion that you put onto that. For instance, I'll talk about an experience that I had where my car was broken into. Recently, I parked my car in San Francisco and it was broken into. And whoever broke into my car stole a bunch of stuff that I really needed. Cameras, important things, sentimental jewelry and stuff that I had kept in my car. And for me, this situation was very negative. Of course, I was very upset. I felt like I had lost a lot of things. But when you actually look at the situation, for the burglar, that was probably very positive. They broke into a random car on the street who happened to have a lot of interesting things in the trunk. For them, they can probably sell a lot of those things and earn a lot of money. There was a backpack with provisions and a sleeping bag in the trunk. And that's probably keeping them warm if they are homeless and on the streets. So whereas for me this was a negative situation, for the person who robbed the car, it was probably a very positive situation. And for the random stranger who is in the grocery store checkout line behind me 2 weeks ago, they're probably completely indifferent. So when you look at any situation, it's not positive nor negative, it just is, and we attach that meaning to it. So when a situation is happening to you that is negative, you can do your best to try to see it as just being a situation that you're attaching something negative to. And when you take off a lot of that emotional kind of bandaging and packaging that we put on it, we can start to look for some sliver of good within that situation. Maybe overall the situation isn't super beneficial to us, but I guarantee you there is at least one piece that has a positivity streak or a silver lining or a little part of it that is beneficial to you or someone else, or that in the long run this is going to turn around for you, it's going to teach you a life lesson, or it's going to benefit you in some way. And when you take yourself out of that situation emotionally and start seeing things from that point of view, all of a sudden that situation doesn't affect you as much. It doesn't attach to you and like carry on throughout your entire day. And a lot of times, especially for me in the past, I would hold on to something that happened in the morning and my entire day, everything would just be bad. I was labeling everything as negative. I was like, oh, this went wrong. I was late for this. I ran out of gas. I spilled my lunch all over me, blah, 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 blah. And I was almost like seeking out the negative. And of course I was having bad days. But when I chose to step away and said, this situation happened, this is what I'm going to learn from it, or this is the silver lining, or this is the piece of positivity that I'll draw from that, I almost come to terms with it so I don't have to let it attach to me. And again, if I mirror out positivity to those around me and give a couple smiles at the grocery store and wave to the stranger in the car next to me who's like, why is this weird chick waving at me? It just brings a little bit more positivity into the world. And eventually the people around me in those days start to mirror that back to me. And this is something that you can do in your life as well. So remember that you can be the cause instead of the effect. And that even though you do not have control of anything that happens around you, you always have control of how you see or view that situation. And I know that life is hard. I know that things happen that can be frustrating. And I also know that very traumatic things happen. But for me, I'll talk about two of those instances, and one was my acne. For the longest time, I felt like acne was the worst thing that happened to me. It caused a lot of self-destructive behaviors for me. It stopped me from being social, and it was really the biggest burden of my life. But at the same time, acne is what allowed me to start posting videos on the internet, start sharing my pain and trying to connect with other people, to find beauty in myself, to find a community, to find positivity, and to not feel so alone. And because of that, I now have the job of my dreams. Some of my best friends are acne sufferers on the internet who reached out to me, and I would not have those relationships without my acne. I have you. We are sharing this experience. You are sitting here giving me your valuable, precious time that I am so grateful for, because together, you and I can learn and grow. And if it weren't for the negativity of acne, I would never be here. If it weren't for the negativity of acne, I wouldn't know how I define beauty. I wouldn't be an advocate for mental and physical health. I wouldn't be an advocate for beauty of all shapes and sizes. And so for that, I'm very grateful. Also, the passing of my grandfather. That was one of the hardest things for me because he really was like a dad for me. And of course, I still get very emotional when I think about that situation. But instead of perceiving that as a loss, I try to see it as a gain. I didn't lose my grandfather. I still have all of the memories and all of the love right here. But what he gained is freedom. What he gained is a lack of suffering. You know, he was so sick that when he passed away, it was almost like he was being unchained and he was free to not feel that pain and be trapped inside a body that doesn't work anymore. And so even though death is always going to be hard, that is how I see that situation. And actually seeing it that way brings me a lot of inner peace. So guys, when it comes to life, I know that it is always a roller coaster, but remember that roller coasters are meant to ride and have a ton of fun on. So I really hope that this video helped you. I hope that it gave you a little bit of perspective. Welcome to one of my happy places, is by the lake in the mountains with the trees. And I thought, you know what? It is a gorgeous day. I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna talk about something that I think is important, and I'm just gonna rep my heavily meditated t-shirt from Etsy. Literally best $25 I've spent on the internet in probably the last 6 months. I love it. Anyways, I love you guys. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, be sure to let me know. Always remember to be beautiful. It is you that puts the you in beauty, and I cannot wait to see you in the next video. Love you guys. Bye.